says people have been trying to break into this house for days, at night." Brooks ran his hand through his hair in a gesture of bewilderment. Then he seemed to catch at a hope. "What sort of people?" he queried sharply. Dale was puzzled. "She doesn't know." The excitement in her lover's manner came to a head. "That proves exactly what I've contended right along," he said, thudding one fist softly into the palm of the other. "Through some underneath channel old Fleming has been selling those securities for months, turning them into cash. And somebody knows about it, and knows that that money is hidden here. Don't you see? Your Aunt Cornelia has crabbed the game by coming here." "Why didn't you tell the police that? Now they think because you ran away." "Ran away? The only chance I had was a few hours to myself to try to prove what actually happened." "Why don't you tell the detective what you think?" said Dale, at her wits' ends. "That Courtleigh Fleming took the money, and that it is still here." Her lover's face grew somber. "He'd take me into custody at once, and I'd have no chance to search." He was searching now. His eyes roved about the living room, walls, ceiling, hopefully, desperately looking for a clue, the tiniest clue to support his theory. "Why are you so sure it is here?" queried Dale. Brooks explained. "You must remember that Fleming was no ordinary defaulter, and he had no intention of being exiled to a foreign country. He wanted to come back here and take his place in the community while I was in the pen." "But even then—" He interrupted her. "Listen, dear." He crossed to the billiard room door, closed it firmly, returned. "The architect that built this house was an old friend of mine," he said in hushed accents. "We were together in France, and you know the way fellows get to talking when they're far away and cut off." He paused, seeing the cruel gleam of the flame-throwers, two figures huddled in a foxhole, whiling away the terrible hours of waiting by muttered talk. "Just an hour or two before a shell got this friend of mine," he resumed, "he told me he had built a hidden room in this house." "Where?" gasped Dale. Brooks shook his head. "I don't know. We never got to finish that conversation. But I remember what he said. He said, 'You watch old Fleming. If I get mine over here it won't break his heart.' He didn't want any living being to know about that room." Now Dale was as excited as he. "Then you think the money is in this hidden room?" "I do," said Brooks decidedly. "I don't think Fleming took it away with him. He was too shrewd for that. No, he meant to come back all right, the minute he got word the bank had been looted. And he fixed things so I'd be railroaded to prison. You wouldn't understand, but it was pretty neat. And then the fool nephew rents this house the minute he's dead, and whoever knows about the money—" "Jack, why isn't it the nephew who is trying to break in?" "He wouldn't have to break in. He could make an excuse and come in any time." He clenched his hands despairingly. "If I could only get hold of a blueprint of this place." Dale's face fell. It was sickening to be so close to the secret and yet not find it. "Oh, Jack, I'm so confused and worried," she confessed, with a little sob. Brooks put his hands on her shoulders in an effort to cheer her spirits. "Now listen, dear," he said firmly. "This isn't as hard as it sounds. I've got a clear night to work in, and as true as I'm standing here, that money's in this house. Listen, honey, it's like this." He pantomimed the old nursery rhyme of the house that Jack built. "Here's the house that Courtleigh Fleming built. Here somewhere is the hidden room in the house that Courtleigh Fleming built, and here, somewhere, pray heaven, is the money, in the hidden room, in the house that Courtleigh Fleming built. When you're low in your mind, just say that over." She managed a faint smile. "I've forgotten it already," she said, drooping. He still strove for an offhand gaiety that he did not feel. "Why, look here," and she followed the play of his hands obediently, like a tired child. "It's a sort of game, dearest. Money, money, who's got the money? You know." For the dozenth time he stared at the unrevealing walls of the room. "For that matter," he added, "the hidden room may be behind these very walls." He looked about for a tool, a poker, anything that would sound the walls and test them for hollow spaces. Ah, he had it. That driver and the bag of golf clubs over in the corner. He took the driver and stood wondering where he had best begin. That blank wall above the fireplace looked as promising as any. He tapped it gently with the golf club, afraid to make too much noise, and yet anxious to test the wall as thoroughly as possible. A dull, heavy reverberation answered his stroke. Nothing hollow there, apparently. As he tried another spot, again thunder beat the long roll on its iron drum outside in the night. The lights blinked, wavered, recovered. "The lights are going out again," said Dale dully. Her excitement sunk into stupefied calm. "Let them go. The less light the better for me. The only thing to do is to go over this house room by room." He pointed to the billiard room door. "What's in there?" "The billiard room." She was thinking hard. "Jack, perhaps Courtleigh Fleming's nephew would know where the blueprints are." He looked dubious. "It's a chance, but not a very good one," he said. "Well," he led the way into the billiard room and began to rap at random upon its walls while Dale listened intently for any echo that might betray the presence of a hidden chamber or sliding panel. Then it happened that Lizzie received the first real thrill of what was to prove to her, and to others, a sensational and hideous night. For coming into the living room to lay a cloth for Mr. Anderson's night suppers, not only did the lights blink threateningly and the thunder roll, but a series of spirit raps was certainly to be heard coming from the region of the billiard room. "Oh, my God!" she wailed. In the next instant the lights went out, leaving her in inky darkness. With a loud shriek she bolted out of the room. Thunder, lightning, dashing of rain on the streaming glass of the windows, the storm hallooed its hounds. Dale huddled close to her lover as they groped their way back to the living room, cautiously, doing their best to keep from stumbling against some heavy piece of furniture whose fall would arouse the house. "There's a candle on the table, Jack, if I can find the table." Her outstretched hands touched a familiar object. "Yes, here it is." She fumbled for a moment. "Have you any matches?" "Yes." He struck one, another, lit the candle, set it down on the table. In the weak glow of the little taper, whose tiny flame illuminated but a portion of the living room, his face looked tense and strained. "It's pretty nearly hopeless," he said, "if all the walls are paneled like that." As if in mockery of his words and his quest, a muffled knocking that seemed to come from the ceiling of the very room he stood in answered his despair. "What's that?" gasped Dale. They listened. The knocking was repeated. Knock. 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 "Someone else is looking for the hidden room," muttered Brooks, gazing up at the ceiling intently, as if he could tear from it the secret of this new mystery by sheer strength of will. End of Chapter 7. Recording by Alan Winterowd. Boomcoach.blogspot.com